So we will begin with 3 back-to-back presentations. First, we have Akhil, who will give us kind of an introduction into the topic, let us know some technical details that are really helpful for understanding the topic better. Our second speaker is Magnus, and he's taking a perspective more from the power system in addressing this topic, and tells us about some potential economic opportunities and pitfalls. And finally, Mads will help us nuance the issue with important social aspects such as power dynamics imposed by tech giants and transparency in their practices.
Yes, and following the presentations, we'll have a group discussion. So we highly encourage you to participate, and you can already start thinking about the questions you want to ask the speakers while they're presenting. And after the Q&A, we'll have pizza, so please stick around and have a chat with us, with the speakers and your fellow participants. With that, let's begin. So first up is Akhil Anand, a postdoc at the Department of Engineering Cybernetics, associated with the Norwegian Center on AI Decisions. He definitely has a great background to introduce the topic of the seminar. So Akhil, the floor is yours.
So welcome everyone to the first talk. So the topic is who benefits from the rise of AI and the data centers. So I'll briefly talk about my background. So I'm a postdoc researcher at the Department of Engineering Cybernetics, as already mentioned, working with Professor Sebastian Groh. So I'm actually stepping in for him here. And we're also associated with the Norwegian Center on AI for Decisions. And my expertise is on the intersection between AI and formal decision-making tools such as control theory, operational research, reinforcement learning, and so on. So I'm also very interested in the topics in the practical applications of energy and food systems. So just a disclaimer, so I'm not an expert at all in data centers. So whatever I'm going to talk about is a synthesis of public literature and some discussions with some people. And I guess you'll hear more authoritative talks in the next 2 lectures. So my goal is to provide some technical details to the topic and also maybe provide some wishful thinking from the practical aspect of it. So 2 important aspects on data center discussion is surrounding around economics and the energy aspect. So some people claim it is the new oil, and it's definitely a fast-growing industry. And a lot of countries want to build a national competitiveness on this, and also it is supposed to bring a lot of value and jobs and so on. And then there is the question of energy, which is basically, it's a very energy-hungry process. And there is with the rapid growth of AI and the need for compute is continuously going up. And so the need for energy is going up. And there is also issues associated with the cooling and so on. I will discuss later. And there is from the Norwegian Ministry of Digitalization, there is a strategy on Norwegian strategy on data center industry, and there it is clearly described why it's important for Norway and how Norway can benefit from this. Of course, one important point here is that Norway has a lot of cheap renewable power, which through which we can run like this industry in a green way. And also the cold climate is supposed to help with the cooling issue. And there is a grid infrastructure, which is quite well established even in the rural areas of Norway, where these data centers are supposed to be placed in many cases. And of course, who benefits from this? It will lead to natural value creation. A lot of foreign investment can come in. And then also it can create jobs in these local areas. And then it's supposed to help with the digitalization of the society and help developing local markets around this AI industry, and also supposed to be a sustainable growth industry. So these are points which I took from this the strategy report from the ministry. So of course, then the answer is the Norwegian society will benefit from this, right? Or it's maybe not clear. Maybe we are missing a lot of perspective on this. But what is important to note is that with all these arguments and the existing circumstances, it is inevitable that this industry is gonna grow and it is here to stay. Okay, now into some technical details. Firstly, there is 2 types of data centers when we talk about data centers. One is the data centers for storage. That's basically a lot of SSDs and storage devices. And then there is this compute centers, which is basically the data centers we talk when we mention about AI. so which is mainly used for training and inference purposes of these AI models at this point. And one important point to note here is that this compute or AI data centers are, first of all, it is quite power heavy, or like it needs much more power density than a storage data center. But also importantly, the labor costs associated to compute data centers are much higher. Some numbers say 5 to 10 times compared to storage data centers. And then why is AI data centers so power hungry? So it's because of the huge math operations that is associated with the training or inference of these AI models. And also another important point here is that the AI development as of now is based on the scaling law. So people are pushing for larger and larger models and more data. So it is supposed to give you better performance, and they are pushing the limits of it. And that means we never have enough compute. So that's also the reason for this huge boom or push towards more and more data centers everywhere. And then another central issue surrounding data centers is the heat and the water issue. So one point to note here is that almost all the energy we put in a data center is basically waste heat. And this means we need a lot of cooling. So before this AI data centers, for storage data centers, it was mostly air-based cooling, and that's now a legacy system, and people are moving on to liquid cooling because of the higher efficiency you can achieve with it, and also because of the high power density associated with this compute data centers. And this leads to a lot of huge issues with the water use, first of all, but also pollution. And there has been a lot of political issues already in the US and Uruguay, India, Spain, for example. And then another point is, okay, are we just seeing a boom? Is it the boom part of the boom bust technological cycle, right? So of course, what we are happening with this boom now is it's majorly driven by the chatbots, right? So all the generative AI, LLMs. But if you look into what is promised from the AI development itself for the future of the AI, so there is an interesting opinion paper recently from DeepMind where they classify this AI development into 6 stages, and we are supposed to be in the level 1, or like the second stage of it, where we are talking about all this generative AI and associated emerging AGI in there. So we are just at the very start of this whole process. And the future is not going to be just text-based LLMs. It's going to be more multimodal. So it might have a lot of vision data, audio, spectral, lidar, radar, and so on. So it's going to be like very multimodal data, but also much more complex data. And that means more compute. So it means you need more and more data centers. And there is also a push for more and more foundation models. That's also multimodality and large context. And so on. So in a sense, we are pushing for more and more compute. Now, the Norwegian context. So one point is that it can help local AI industry in Norway. So first of all, one point I would like to raise here is that Norway lacks ground in this kind of scale generative AI. So, but there is a progress is being made in more AI applications for industrial, healthcare, energy, for example. Many of these applications may not, or many of these high impact applications may not need so much compute and data, because many of these applications may not even have a lot of data to work with in the first place, except for some cases like healthcare. So it's not given in that sense. And then another point is the high labor cost. So we know that we in this country we have a high labor cost, maybe for good reasons, but it can make it less attractive for this compute heavy data centers. So we might not develop competence in there if we don't ensure that will not happen. And then another point is, of course, sustainability associated with the renewable energy sources in Norway. So this is supposed to reduce the CO2 emissions, right? And sustainability, as we all know, it is like one of the most misused terms, of course, together with the AI. But we should look more holistically into this. It's not just CO2 emissions, but what about the ecological and social impacts? How is it going to impact all the water resources, or how is it this waste heat? If we dump it into our rivers, how is it going to affect all this very sensitive ecological systems in the Norwegian rivers or in the fjords? So the idea is, what I would like to point is to what is missing in the debate is maybe more of a holistic discussion. It's not just about economics and some sustainability metrics, but more looking into a system-wide view of ecology and how can we build resilient communities around such a new business that is going to evolve now. And these local communities, why? Because these data centers are going to pop up in very local or very rural areas. On example, or like on visual example for this could be like, so we know that there is a lot of waste heat coming from here, and in Norway we know, like with the cold climate, there is a need for waste heat for food production. For example, we can use it to produce food in greenhouses in inland areas in Norway where there is a need for it in the winter time. And also, we know data centers are very extractive in terms of local energy sources. Can we place them in an energy community way of thinking, so that we can the local communities can benefit from that? So maybe we'll hear that more from Magnus later. And so this kind of thinking can lead to more community supported agriculture and local energy communities around data centers. So the idea is that, okay, how can we think to develop much circular bioeconomy kind of way than just focusing on specific aspects of it. And this is not just wishful thinking. So we already have some examples. So for example, there was a project in Oslo with the Stack infrastructure and Celsio to use the waste heat with the district heating system to heat up to 5,000 apartments. There are some examples in northern Sweden regarding the greenhouse, also in Netherlands. And there were some proposals for inland trout farming at Rukkan with another data center there. And there is also a feasibility study that is happening in our neighborhood in Dahl for this greenhouse data center integration. So with this, I will just conclude. And the key takeaways for me is, first of all, data centers are here and they are here to stay. And it is important for Norway to focus on building competence in AI or compute-heavy data centers. And then we should consider a system-wide view, incorporating ecological and societal elements into it rather than just economics and just some aspects of the sustainability. And this is, we can see it as an opportunity to develop a circular bioeconomy around, and that can help us to create resilient local communities in Norway. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. Next up, we have Magnus Korpås, an expert in energy systems, and he is a professor at the Department of Electric Engineering and is also the Vice Director of NTNU Energy. So, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, let's start by looking at the AI-generated picture. It looks cute and cuddly, but it's not. It's really spooky, and that's why I always keep quite far away from AI applications. I think I'm on level 0 on Akhil's list, because if you look closely, you see that the fur is blended into the woolen jumper, so it's always something weird with that. Anyway, I'm an energy systems guy, and I'll then talk about the energy system aspects of data centers, mostly in Norway, and a little bit about the global scale. So data centers are interested in Norway due to our high amounts of renewable energy. It's basically a hydro and wind-driven power system that we do have. But towards 2050, we need to increase electricity production in order to be able to decarbonize more of our energy use that is still fossil. So there is a lot of competition going on about who wants access to our renewable energy sources. And the projections varies quite much depending on how much we manage to decarbonize and how many other applications of electricity use that we will see in the near future. So we have electrification of transport, battery production facilities, electrification and decarbonization of industries, electrification of oil platforms, and now more and more large data centers picking up the competition for grid and power generation capacity. Meanwhile, I would also stress that we are not going to make a low carbon society without managing to avoid some of the a lot of the needs that we have today for fossil energy and also for renewable energy, that we actually try to cut some of the consumption and not only move it to other cleaner energy sources. And globally, it is the data centers are growing in size, and that also means that the consumption of electricity is growing, and it is mostly what IA call accelerated servers. It means computing for machine learning and so forth that are accelerating also the consumption. And with that also comes increased need for cooling. And not to make a big point of statistics, but just to show that the purple bars here, crypto computing mining is also coming up, although still at a slower pace than other new applications. And there is, as with the electricity consumption scenarios for Norway, there is a large uncertainties in how much electricity that data centers and AI will need. IA alone have a spread of like 1,000 terawatt hours for the next 10 years. That's quite a big uncertainty. And if you look at some recent publications, meta-analysis of scenarios, you'll see even higher spreads. So it's very uncertain. And we can also have some rebounds effects of higher efficiency, making applications of AI even more attractive, pushing up the total consumption. In Norway, it's not so much electricity that has been used for AI and data centers so far, but we see a steady growth. It's about 2 terawatt hours per year now, compared to total consumption of 140 terawatt hours. And towards 2050, NVE expect that computer-driven applications will grow to about 8% of the total consumption. While Tema Consulting has more than twice as much, maybe 3 times higher predictions towards 2050, up to 23 terawatt hours. So also a big spread, but within the acceptable range, I would say, compared to the other energy uses. So in the power system, data centers and AI have some distinct features that also were mentioned earlier by Akhil. So they have a high utilization rate and a higher consumption in summer due to cooling. It's costly to build, and of course, data center owners want cheap power, but still, the sensitivity to power prices are less than other consumers, meaning that they have a higher willingness to pay for grid connections and electricity than many other consumption types that are more marginally economic. And stable grid supply is more important than the price. And therefore, they also have their own backup systems based on diesel and batteries. They can provide some flexibility. Here we see an example from a research paper showing that most of the workload can be categorized as delay tolerant. But the question is it economically interesting for the owners to be flexible for the power system, to be on service? And they can provide heat, which was exemplified in a great way in the previous speech. They also tried to do so in Norway. And some companies try to just reduce the need for grid altogether and build microgrids for their data centers based on renewables, small-scale nuclear, batteries, and so forth. So in Norway, it is attractive with data centers in Norway. So therefore, what happens is that they take over for the decarbonization projects that might be delayed due to increased cost or technology uncertainty, then the data centers stand there, raise up their hand, and yeah, we can take the premises and we're ready to build. So now half of the consumption queue in grid for the grid companies are for data centers, and most of them happens to be in the southeastern corner of Norway, where we have the highest prices. And actually, like in NO1, maybe I misprinted here, it's actually an import area. So it kind of makes the power balance worse. While in the north of Norway, we have a lot of excess power, but also less fibers. So it's not that attractive yet to build data centers. So at the same time, we have literally no new generation facilities in Norway coming online because new power plants, especially wind power plants, they are extremely unpopular. So what happens then when demand is unlimited and the resources are scarce? Then there is a political interest in constraining the use of electricity for data centers. So we should prioritize defense instead of cat videos. All the data centers should have their own production in order to be accepted. And now it's about time to prioritize our power because we are not able to produce any new power production as it seems. So to summarize, I would then say that the AI revolution can make decarbonization in Norway harder because it is more competitive than other consumption types. But at the same time, we should also remember that these technologies could facilitate decarbonization by making the energy system smarter. And when it comes to a point of deficit, we will have a problem if we're not able to produce more electricity, build more production facilities. So therefore, political regulations are tempting, but I'm very doubtful that we should ban legal industries and put aside principle of fairness and business neutrality. So for those of you who are understand Norwegian, you can then hear more about these dilemmas in a recent podcast. So by that, I stop.
Thank you very much, Magnus, for this enlightening presentation. And now we will have Mads Dahl Gjefsen, who is senior researcher at NTNU Social Research. His background is in science and technology studies and responsible research and innovation. Very much looking forward to your speech.
Thank you. Is the sound okay here? Yep. So I didn't answer the question of who benefits from AI, but I will try and give a contribution to the question all the same by connecting the kind of scales of data centers as a phenomena. And I'll be doing that with reference to some of the kind of contextual backdrop that has already been mentioned in the past presentations, but there is kind of a dramatic increase in the expansion of data centers. There was already the situation when this project L2D got started, which slightly predated the sort of AI boom that we find ourselves in now. And the jury is kind of divided or are still out on the question of the relationship of this trend with the prospects for sustainability. One graphic here is in Norwegian, but it just references how from a Norwegian policy standpoint, there is a strong interest in kind of trying to capture and support the right kind of sustainability potential inherent in the kind of expansion of digital infrastructure and data centers. So L2D Limits to Digitalization is a project we're about halfway into it now. Mostly a social scientific project, but with technical partners as well, concerned with digital growth as a phenomena. So it started out with fascination with what growth means in the context of the digital, and fascination that was also informed by historical research into technology attention cycles and kind of promissory cycles in general, as well as to the nature of growth as not necessarily compatible with sustainability, depending on how you view the terms. And so based on that, the final thing to mention about L2D is that it has a very explicit normative orientation that I'll talk more about. It seeks to interventions. It has an interventionist ambition, as well as other knowledge goals of trying to understand how a principle of sufficiency, which approximately means enoughness or moderation, as opposed to sort of unhinged growth, might be applied to the phenomena of digital infrastructure expansion. So this is a kind of summary of our project concept, and the key thing here is that we try and connect data centers as examples of the material manifestation of digitalization at 3 different scales. So the local site communities, the national level of Norway in our case, that is trying to stimulate industrial expansion in certain kinds of ways, and then the most kind of general and global sense of digitalization with respect to sustainability as some kind of force and a source of promise with respect to realizing sustainability. Like I said, we're a social scientific project primarily, and our approach is sort of interpretative, and our questions are sort of existentially motivated more than technically motivated. But we are concerned with being aware of the very tangible, measurable consequences of digitalization as a phenomena, so energy use, water use, space use, and so on, resource implications, but also the more socio-cultural expressions of digitalization. And then the theoretical question, like I said, is a normatively oriented one. What potential for sufficiency as a concept in the face of this expansion? So I'll just very briefly mention examples from each of these 3 levels of work. So at the national level, we have gotten fairly far in providing a sociological field analysis of Norway's data center history. That's a particular sociological approach to studying how new sectors develop over time. So we trace the history of data centers in Norway from reactions in antecedent social fields of ICT, communications, energy, and energy-producing regions in Norway, and to some extent also security as a societal field. Actors from all of these areas kind of mobilized around 2010 in the face of a perceived crisis where Norway was increasingly losing out compared with Denmark and Sweden in terms of attracting the very largest big tech corporations who were seeking to expand data centers at that time in the Nordic region, which is a logical geographical region to turn to based on the reasons that you just heard in the last talk. And so based on this, there was a lot of trial and error and quick mobilization in Norwegian bureaucracies to try and adapt to the needs of these major international actors and try and create a favorable investment environment targeting this industry. And this is the background for what was the first policy strategy on data centers back in 2018, and its 2 more recent iterations. And following a lot of controversies where the rapid rise of cryptocurrency mining and so on motivated a lot of quick scrambles to regulate and control and create transparency in the sector. We have reached maybe more of a stable situation right now in terms of the regulatory and policy structures and who the major actors are and so on. But there continue to be new kind of destabilizing events, generative AI being one, fluctuating energy prices and the current security situation, being among the more current ones. So just turning to the global level, two quick examples from there. One is not my making, but our technical partners at Boston University just launched a transparency and accountability roadmap pertaining to data centers and AI. And they did this based on an understanding of how there are a lot of voluntary measures being proposed by industry actors now to report on energy usage, water usage, and so on. But there remains a lot of secrecy around the content of kind of energy usage via computing processes and so on. So there is really a lot of potential for standardizing and making more transparent the activities that lay behind the most commonly cited numbers, like the International Energy Agency statistics. We've also traced, this is example number 2 now, the changes in sustainability reporting language among most of the big tech corporations from before and after the current AI boom. And we see a very marked shift from expressions of data centers that are technological installations that in principle can be kind of tamed and neutralized and be made very optimally efficient and so on. But after the very continued escalation of data center expansions with AI, we see a lot of these ambitions appearing to be abandoned, no longer seen as realistic, and instead a turn in the discourses towards a kind of enabling promise of AI for sustainability. And then finally, from the local level here in Norway, we have our PhD candidate in the project, Synne Jønnes, who is out documenting the experiences in 6 municipalities. And I won't go into the detail, but you can see from the tentative kind of headlines there for the stories that she's documenting, how the experiences in Norwegian municipalities with the industry actors that are launching different types of data centers, that the experience are very, very different. And the sites, of course, also are really different in scale and the extent to which they're able to have credible claims to circularity, excess heat usage, and so on. Okay, so hope this is my final slide. Where do we stand now? In terms of our normative stance, sufficiency, the conceptual challenge is really still very difficult. We struggle to operationalize the notion of sufficiency in relation to this phenomenon of digital expansion. And we think that at all of the levels that we study, the recurring theme is the distinctive kind of lack of transparency of the sector. You get discussions about digitalization and digital infrastructure expansion as necessary for security reasons. You get contrasts with cat videos and so on. And of course, each of these things are true and many other things are true. This is all inherent to the phenomenon, but the challenge to make sense of these from a normative standpoint is you don't really have access to the internal workings and the relative intensity behind all of these uses of the digital. I might stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mads, for that nice presentation. So now we will invite all 3 speakers to come up onto the stage, and so we can have some group discussion here. So we'll be taking some questions from the audience, both here and online. So those of you online, just raise your hand digitally if you have a question, and here in the room, please raise your hand physically if you have a question, and Benjamin will come and give you a microphone. So any questions to kick off here? Okay.
Thank you. Dirk Reinhardt, Cybernetics Department as well. I have a question to Mats on the normative standpoint. Is it a big problem being discussed in your field if people do cat videos or software development with their prompts? I mean, with data centers, do people care on the question if they should attract them, what the users in the end are doing with it? That's what I understood from your talk was difficult to quantify.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking how to interpret the question, because the reason I bring that up is if you look at the Norwegian history of first losing out and then later trying to attract the industry as a national policy strategy, then you see the initial formulations of that policy ambition as being about attracting a type of industry that is uniquely suited to Norway in the senses of fitting its climate, tying in with these the new oil type of narratives and the economic transitioning needs of Norway, and the potential for contributing to the energy transitions as well. But if you follow the policy language nationally up until today, you will now see more language in the direction of security potential, or the need for security reasons to have these kinds of centers on Norwegian soil. And you see controversies, especially in the Hamar area, where there is a conflict and perceived conflict between the data center expansion that is happening there and the ammunitions factory across the lake that could maybe use the same power. So it's kind of a competition between societal and normative goals. And then the way that discussions like that play out in the media can be the kind of thing I mentioned, like cat videos or security. But
okay, I will talk more to you offline, but thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Akhil or Magnus? If you. Okay. Yeah.
That there is there is a growing, I would say, discussion about this prioritization, and then we should use the power to something that is good for the society and stuff like that. And then I just start asking, okay, so what you mean is who decides that? Is it like is it up to the politicians to make a priority? Okay, so you use data centers for cat videos? No, then you're not allowed in Norway. But what do? Yeah, you use it for weapon production, or now it's actually weapon. But then it's okay. I think it's a very, very difficult task for politicians to make those prioritizations. But that's my personal point of view. Yeah.
Just a slight comment to add on. We didn't talk so much about cryptocurrency today. And you can convincingly argue that crypto is an entirely different thing, but you can't really get away from the fact that the crypto's emergence in Norway was enabled by a lot of the same structures that has enabled other types of data centers emergence in Norway. And crypto, unlike cat videos, has proved very easy to, or comparatively easy to regulate against. And without much public disagreement about it either. But so it kind of becomes the example-setting case of these kinds of trying to demarcate the okay from the not okay forms of the digital.
Yes, that's a very interesting question. How should we regulate cat videos? Or yeah, this poses an interesting challenge for policymakers. Do we have any other questions? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Jordan Everts. I'm with IGS over at Dragbull. PhD student there. I have a question about the labor market. Specifically, there's been some talk about like the job creation aspect of AI and the data centers in which they can provide. But I'm very curious about the type of jobs that the AI data centers create beyond the initial construction phase with building the infrastructure and the actual site where the data center is. What kind of jobs do these data centers then provide to the local communities in which they're inhabiting? Do the local residents actually see the benefit of these sort of jobs like permeating into the local labor market? Or are they sort of more broader jobs that can be more remote based or operated entirely from outside of the communities?
Maybe Akhil, you have the...
I can say a little bit about like during the operation of the data center itself, there can be a lot of software management kind of jobs, system management jobs, but I don't know exactly if it can be remote or it needs to be there. So there can be security issues and so on. But then there is also a lot of maintenance for this infrastructure. So one point I discussed with some expert on this is also like this compute data centers, which I mentioned, can have a lot of can create a lot of jobs, and that is maybe also a negative side for Norwegian investment. But I also had a discussion with one of the communities nearby who is enabling one of this project, and they were expecting, or their argument was it will bring in more ancillary jobs because of various reasons around this particular industry, but I don't know in detail about it.
I can also gladly add to that. Yeah, exactly. That there is some jobs, of course, during the construction phase. But I would say that the whole point of computing and data centers and so on is that they make more of us people available for other jobs, because there's a lot of value creation with not so much labor intensive work. That's the whole point. And for a data center or an AI center that is mostly controlled remotely, you can use those resources from anywhere. It doesn't matter for me where I use my computer. Where is the computing going on? It can be in a server somewhere else. And for a data center in operation, you typically need some security guards and a plumber and an electrician and so on. And actually, in those areas, when they get these data centers up and running there, they see that it's a competition to get those people, even they don't need much people. So I don't really see the whole argument that they create so much jobs. The point is that they create a lot of value for someone without needing to do so much, and you can do other things. That's like my take on that.
Anything to add there?
Not really.
Okay.
No, it's not something I've worked on so much firsthand, but I can say that when we go out to the municipalities, of course, that is the big question for all of them.
So that leads to my point there for the municipalities, that they should be better at negotiating with the developers of the data centers to get some of the value creation, not get a lot of promises for jobs, which is you practically don't need. But they want to establish data centers because someone earns money on it, or else you wouldn't have built the data center. So you could rather try to get a part of that, I would say, value creation.
I can maybe add just that among the municipalities we speak to, the advantages and experiences they reference are, from the Green Mountain Center being built in Hamar-Løten. They negotiated a number of jobs created guarantee into the agreement with the developer. And in Skien, where Google is developing a major center, they are citing things like infrastructure expansion and activity associated with that, but also have very high hopes for the cluster of other activities and industries that will maybe be in some sort of symbiosis with the data center around the waste heat.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm just curious, how could you ensure or at least guide that this value creation would not just benefit the, CEOs who can then say lay off people from their companies, and that the value creation maybe ends up, how
Yeah, so my whole point was that when there is an external investor that want to build a data center somewhere and earn money on that, you don't need much local workforce to be able to run a modern computing center or data center. You don't need much. So my point is that then for the local municipality to be interested in even saying yes to establishing a data center in our municipality. Okay, what's in it for us? Okay, you can get some job promises, but I think that it would be better to get some of the revenues rather than just promises of some jobs that can be quite difficult to count. It's also about, okay, maybe this data center creates 50 jobs, but where? If you can remotely operate it.
Yeah, I'll have to ask you about that more later. Like, how would we make that happen? All right, so we have right here. Okay.
Hi, I am Letizia Iaccheri. I am professor of software engineering, but about this I know very little, so I don't expect professor things, but more ignorant thing. So in my mind, Magnus, I think opposite than you, because we educate software engineers. So I dream about generating jobs that are high level for intelligent people like the students in this room that can become knowledgeable, creative software engineers. For me, that money comes because we sell energy is not my objective. So do you think that it will be possible also to generate this kind of jobs, or will this data center only like Norway sell energy and Norwegian people will do, I don't know, what will we do then?
That's a great question. I can try to start to answer, but mine was that these type of jobs, you don't need to, that workforce doesn't need to move to, for instance, Dahl, where the data center is. They can do that type of work from other places than exactly locally where the data center is. So data centers and AI centers, we need that for the development of the society, and we need people who knows how to do that. I recently read in the news today that there were a couple of master students from, I think, robotics that dropped out because university was too slow, and AI opened so many opportunities that we're going to be consultant in the consultancy sector as young people, enabling the use of AI for business. So those jobs happens, I think, everywhere. But now the question was whether the jobs are created. Where are the jobs created? And for the local municipality, I don't think that it's not there. It's somewhere else. And it can still be in Norway, of course. But then, of course, we can also develop our own kind of data centers, AI centers. Now I talk maybe more about external case, where Microsoft or Google knocks on the door and say, hey, let's develop. They work more, say, independently.
I think one argument in the Norwegian strategy is also that to help the local AI industry, right? The local AI developments. If we have, such as Magnus was saying, so if we have our own infrastructure, not some external investors for their foreign interest. So in that case, maybe it could help to create jobs if we create that kind of expertise, and if it is possible to do that in a way, then maybe it helps.
All right, we have a question here in the
Yeah.
there. Yep.
Okay. Hello. I'm Marina Bakhtina, and I'm finished my PhD in ecology from NMBU. So I have a question about ecology. So now we are changing our laptops like maybe every 5 years. So what about data centers? If we build then data centers, do we need to change any elements, or how often?
Great question. And we were just lamenting that we don't have an ecologist here to present, so we're glad you're here.
I don't have exact numbers, but of course, a lot of these things needs to be replaced. It's just like GPUs and TPUs or whatever. They all have a life, and including the UPS, which is the batteries, and almost all components have a limited life between a few years, maybe up to 10 years or so. So there is a need of a continuous hardware upgrade. Not only change, this hardware development is happening at a rapid pace also. So it's going to be a continuous upgrade of these things. So if you try to estimate the ecological impact of it, it can be quite high, I would presume. It might depend. For example, like if you have a new hardware which can handle extremely high temperature, maybe the cooling systems has to be changed. I wouldn't imagine the whole center being changed, but I would imagine the new centers are being built to incorporate because there is a hardware development. These companies are closely watching and following, so they would be building it for. But some things like the cooling technology also, there's a lot of work going on, so that can be there is an upgrade happening, but there will be a lot of hardware changes and upgrade, maybe not the data center structure itself.
All right, and then we have a question there in the back.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Hamdi. I'm a professor in civil and environmental engineering. Actually, I would like to say, generally speaking, about this technology or AI to be centered in Norway. It's perfect and very attractive. And because you have cold country, so it's free cooling is available to be used. So that's why, and also it's advanced country, so it can attract many people to host data center there. But because I'm from built environment and energy and the building sector, so also it's a very benefit to get this heat out and to be utilized by district heating system to heat spaces and the built environment. And if there is a big plan, and I'm sure there is plan, but I would like to know if it's already exists. Because it's once you have like heat, you can go to new places and make value creation, like for new places for mining or for fishing or whatever, and then you build community around it because you have it's somehow free energy, which is the waste of data center. So I'm on national level. I'm wondering, this is a question, like if there is a very concrete plan on that. Because for me, it's very obvious. It can be a perfect center like business in Norway.
Who wants to take that one?
I would say there's a lot of I don't fully know, but there's a lot of attempts and hopes and relatively little manifestations of workable kind of symbiotic concepts like that yet, but I know it's a big policy priority also to make it work
There was some I mentioned in my presentation also. There are some pilot studies, and also in Oslo with the Celsio and the Stack infrastructure data center there. I don't know how big it is. Then they had like a study where they had, I think, with 1 megawatt energy consumption by the data center, they could heat up to 5,000 flats in Oslo in the Celsio network using the district heating system. But I think this district heating is very limited to urban areas. So building district heating in such rural places where they're going to build a data center, I don't know about the economic feasibility of that aspect. So maybe we should think using this heat in more other circular processes. But the issue with that is we have to make a plan and put this into into a proper framework from the very start of it. Not that after all this being built and then trying to duct tape it may not be something that will be interesting.
Yeah, maybe some of the studies you're going to conduct can help with that. And then I saw a question over here, Benjamin.
My name is Tuva, and I'm a student at the Department of Communication Technology and Information Security. And I was wondering if you have seen any indications of rent-seeking behavior or vendor lock-in tendencies emerging in the data center market.
Can you repeat what kind of tendencies?
Rent-seeking tendencies or vendor lock-in, where mostly the private try to benefit from data centers without giving too much back to the society as a whole.
It's difficult to say about that. There is, of course, as that currently there are 96 or so different data centers asking for grid capacity, as in from the energy side. So I guess there is a lot of different approaches just to how. But my impression, maybe similar to yours, is that the local municipalities are really, they really want something back, and I think that the actors, they are well aware of that. So they try to accommodate the needs for the municipalities, but whether. So for another perspective is that I think that maybe what is difficult with data centers is that each individual decision is made locally by like a small group of politicians locally, and then there is no one who kind of sees the whole picture. So the sum effect of all the data centers that they're getting is can be an issue on a more national scale, at least when we talk about the energy supply. And then the question is more that should the locals have some help from the government or regulations to say yes or no, and that's I think that's where we stand now.
I think we're out of time. I know we had another question here, but please come and ask it during afterwards. So I hope you all will hang around for a bit, because we should have.
Pizza usually it's over there, but now it's in the back room.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. But that concludes today's seminar. But before we go and get pizza, Vivian, can you tell us about the next one?
Yes, so next seminar will take place on Thursday, November 27. We'll address a very timely topic again, so energy security in Europe and what that means for sustainability transitions. So please join us again next month. We should have an interesting discussion. We already have some speakers lined up. So thank you for coming today. Enjoy the pizza, chat with your peers and our speakers. And again, thank you for coming.